Hi, we're back again, and we're here at Buck Tower Gardens in Lake Wales, Florida, and we're at the Terrace Garden, which is very close to our cafe. For those of you who have wandered through here before, we kind of wanted to go and give an overview of a lot of the work that has gone on behind the scenes for you to know what we've been hard at work doing. If you find this information helpful, please remember to like and share the video. Um, so we've taken advantage of being closed to engage in a lot of horticultural practices that we'd like to be doing anyways. But when we're open to the public, they can be harder to achieve. And this bed here is a great example bed. We actually came in, excavated all of the soil out, and put in fresh soil. And the reason for doing this is that in our annual beds, the soil gets very tired. And when someone says that their soil is tired, what they really mean is that a lot of the nutrients have been used. And this is unfortunately a side effect of annual beds. Um, they tend to run through a lot of nutrients, and because you're pulling them out and replacing them, they don't really put anything back, so people tend to use fertilizers. When we refreshed the soil, we came back in and put in a new planting, and many of the plants that we've included are either very long-lived annuals, so we're going to get um, two or three changeovers out of them, or they're perennials, in which case we should get multiple years out of them. And the reason we're doing this is that the longer the plant is in the ground, the more it's going to be able to help the nutrient cycle of the area. Um, so the other thing we've did is you can see these salvia. For those of you who were here on March 12th, you may remember them at about 6.5 feet tall. Slight exaggeration, but we've also taken all of our salvia back down to the ground and they've refreshed. And part of the reason to do this is one, it's healthy for the plant to get rid of a lot of the old growth, and two, it makes it a lot easier for us to control the growth. And what I mean by that is that when the plant is growing very, very tightly, there's not a lot of room for airspace, or I should say air to blow through the plant. And when plants get very tight, especially in the coastal South, we end up getting a lot of moisture and humidity trapped inside the plants, which anyone who is very involved in gardening can tell you that is going to breed disease. So when we allow the airflow through the plants, we're helping to mitigate that effect. Um, some of the other work that we've been doing is going to be in these beds here, which again, we've taken out a lot of the soil, and in many cases, all of the soil in all of these beds back here. But again, we took the opportunity to refresh our plantings as well. So these are all fresh plants. Another item that we did is we made the decision that even though we are closed for our visitors that are humans, we are still open to our pollinators. So we have been transplanting a lot of our pollinator-friendly plants out of the beds as they were changed over and into this particular bed. This bed we did while we were still open. And the reason that I'm including this is that in the time it took us to do this one bed when we were open, we were able to do all the other beds in this garden. So we have been able to really take advantage of some of the maintenance items that we have to do. But we're also trying to be very cognizant that plants that we planted with pollinators in mind are still staying in the ground. Some of you may also remember in this large void here, there was a plant called Chinese hat, and that plant had really overgrown what it was originally intended to do. So we again cut that all the way to the ground, and you can see it's starting to sprout up. And for those of you who really have an eye for detail, you'll notice that our fig vine is still being controlled, and we really thank some of our other departments, particularly the cafe and guest services, who have very kindly been aiding us on some of our tasks, and they've been helping us with the fig vine maintenance. And for those of you who have fig vine at home, it's highly recommended that after you cut it to the level that you want it or back to the thickness you want it, that you apply a plant growth regulator. And the reason for that is that we're having to cut this probably close to every 10 days to keep it at the correct height. With a plant growth regulator, you're changing that to closer to about once a month. So it really minimizes the quantity of time that you have to spend on these plants. And then finally, as we turn around over into more towards our cafe, another major change that you'll notice is that here in these beds, they had a significant quantity of sword fern. The sword fern has been removed, and the reason we did that is that we have found that the sword fern had created a root mass that was very difficult for water to penetrate, and there was an issue with that because our magnolias were not getting the water that they really needed. So we've removed them. We're hoping to improve the quality of these magnolias. Um, we've added fertilizer. You can see the mulch layer. We're very thankful for the rain that we got this morning. Here at Bok Tower Gardens, we got about an inch of rain between about 4 o'clock this morning and 8 o'clock this morning, and we've gotten about a tenth of an inch of rain over the rest of the day. But you can see on some of these plants, there's just a very weak growth, and then in some instances, such in this first tree here, we've got some dead branches, and this has been going on since these plants for the last few years. So we're trying to address that problem now as well while we're closed. And this was a big project. For those of you who have come through here, I hope you'll recognize the River of Stone, but you can see it's very different. We've taken a lot of our plantings away, primarily because these were plants that were potted plants, and we've brought them all back to the nursery. The reason for this is that they're much easier to care for when we're back all in one place. The watering, the fertilization, any sort of pruning, those sorts of items are all just much easier. Um, and it's very weird for me to be walking in here and talking this loudly because you can hear an echo, and this is the first time I've ever had my voice echo in here because we normally have enough people to and plant matter to absorb that. Um, we also have in our entranceway here our Persian fountain, or the frog fountain as it's also known. And in here, uh, one of the major items that we've done is we've actually turned the water off. It's helping to save energy, but then also we're not using the water. So we've drained that. But perhaps the most significant transformation is here in the rondelle. And this is one of the entry gardens. This is really our primary entryway into the garden. And you can see we've been hard at work here. I mentioned, I think about 3 weeks ago, that we were cutting back a lot of plants around the tower. Well, we've cut back a lot of plants around the rest of the garden too. And you can see the Zamia integrifolia, which a lot of you will know by its common name, which is the Florida Zamia. And these were all cut all the way back, and they're pushing out this really brilliant growth. The other characteristic of these that's really cool are their seed pods. They kind of look, if you're an 8-year-old boy, they might remind you of a hand grenade. So there are some fun things like that going on around here. We're also working on our saw palmettos, Serenoa repens, and these are actually a variety called glauca, and they have that nice blue texture to them. The straight species is more of a green, and you can see this is a bed that we've thinned out. And then Cassidy, if you don't mind showing them right over there, that's a bed we're still working on, so you can really see the difference in the beds that we've worked on versus the beds that we're still working on. Um, so when you are able to come back to Bok Tower Gardens, it's going to be a whole nother garden. But at the same time, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And for anyone who was here before we closed down, you'll notice our flower tower is still here. It's still blooming very, very profusely. So we will continue to have that and be maintaining it. So again, if you enjoyed this video or if you have any questions, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer any questions that come up. So we'll see you next time.